This week at Bungie, 421 is here, talking about the weapon and sandbox changes. There's a ton to go through, so let's get right into it. This comes to us from Chris Proctor and the Sandbox development team. From a high level, they're going to be covering today a handful of goals from the team, GLAIVES, commentary on their design, some plans for future tuning, Flinch and Airborne gameplay, and how we're pushing these into build crafting, tuning one-hit kills in PvP, general tuning for special weapons, exotic weapons, legendary archetypes, and weapon perks. First thing, talking about Airborne gameplay. Destiny has extremely fluid and expressive airborne movement, but that movement must be balanced against grounded players. We want players who enjoy that playstyle to be able to build into it, and they're going to have to make tough decision choices about what they're going to leave behind to do so. Successfully engaging in air is no longer as simple as putting on an Icarus grip, but the upside for heavily investing into it will be higher. With Flinch, excessive flinch is frequent complaint from players, most importantly with primary weapons and taking large chunks of damage from enemies. Players should be able to invest into flinch resistance, and baseline flinch should be lower on a primary weapon, but hand-tuned per archetype so that the weapons that need flinch resistance have easier access to it. Reducing the number of one-hit kills in the Crucible. Shifting combat towards primary gunplay. With weapons, this means tuning specials. Both the effectiveness of special weapons and special weapon uptime overall is one key primary outlier. Then they're looking into underperforming and overperforming legendary and exotic weapons. Season 17 is going to be a larger pass than usual, with more focus on underused weapons and PvP balance. Again, Season 17, May 24th. With the glaive, basic melee attack, not a weapon attack, doesn't consume ammo, deals kinetic damage, so it's more like an underpowered punch that has a sword swing. In general, we prefer to increase melee glaive damage directly, as we're doing in fact, instead of effectively making weapon damage perks mandatory on glaives, and I like that. Good call. Glaives already have a long lunge distance, and increasing this at all results in unreliable behavior over the network, so no melee lunge distance buffs. Our intent: the glaive melee should activate perks that trigger off base melee damage or kills. For an example, we've talked about this. Ammo refill with Grave Robber, weapon damage buff ×5 with Swashbuckler, ammo refill from Sealed Ahamkara Grasps. So the glaive melee should activate those perks. They should not activate perks that trigger off-powered melee damage or kills, or require expending subclass melee energy, like Combination Blow. The glaive melee should benefit from melee damage buffs. They should not benefit from weapon damage buffs, like Rampage or Kill Clip. Glaive projectiles should benefit from weapon damage buffs. Here's what we've changed during Season 16, largely bug fixes with some quality of life changes. Glaive projectile hits to reach maximum energy decrease from 6 to 4. Glaive melees can now be interrupted by Hunter Dodge. Grave Robber now pulls from reserves on glaives instead of generating ammo. Glaives no longer get stuck on Clang Recovery when using a melee attack on each other. Sealed Ahamkara Grasp no longer reloads the glaives on projectile hits, but does on the melee hits as expected. The glaive melees no longer stun lock high health combatants. Glaive melee kills are now tracked in match history for bounties and so forth. For Season 17, we're pushing glaives deeper into the roles of hard-hitting melee damage and near-complete protection when shielded, as well as increasing projectile speed to make them more reliable at range. The glaive shield grants 97.5% damage resistance in PvE, 75% in the Crucible. They've increased the damage versus PvE enemies, except for bosses and vehicles, by 25%, reduced energy drain speed when shielded by 30%, increased projectile speed dependent on the range stat. At 0, increase from 30 to 60 milliseconds. At 100, increase from 80 to 100. So, the range stat will matter with the projectile speed. That's good. All exotic glaives have been buffed, in addition to the global glaive changes. It's going to be easier to build energy. And with all those little itty-bitty things, projectile speed, it's going to be easier. So, the Titan glaive, players now gain and avoid overshield while inside the bubble. Helm of State 14 now applies to the bubble, as it does for Ward of Dawn. The Warlock glaive, increased speed and acceleration of the healing turret projectiles. The Hunter glaive, they've tripled the damage of the wave detonation, increased the number of enemies it can chain from 4 to 8. That's huge. Good buffs. Now, we get into Flinch. This is going to be really interesting. This is something that we've talked about for years, even in Destiny 1. Let's see what they have to say. Flinch has been a common pain point, particularly on primary ammo weapons, so we've rebuilt the stability stat to grant flinch resistance in addition to its other effects, with a maximum flinch resistance of 10% to 25% depending on weapon archetype. With this change, players can build for flinch resistance more easily on weapons that feel flinch more than others, and less so on specials. We don't want it to be easier to use those while under fire. From internal playtests, you might not feel a difference when using just one source of flinch resistance, but when stacking 2 or 3, the benefits are strong. Higher zoom weapons are affected more by flinch, so they took that into account when tuning these numbers. Here's the breakdown for flinch resistance with 100 stability. 25% on auto rifle, SMG, and bow, 20% on pulse, scout, sidearm, machine gun, 15% on hand cannon and trace, 10% on fusions, shotgun, so basically special weapons. Note that a stability stat of below 20 will technically have a small flinch resistance penalty, but only around 5 weapons have a stability stat they can get in that. Probably the Iron Banner weapons, right? Mentioned here because it's a related change. The resilience stat now grants flinch resistance. 0 at 0, 10% at 100. So let's say you're using an auto rifle with 100 stability. You have 10 resilience, that's 35% flinch resistance. And he goes into a 100 stability stat Suros Pulse with Suros Synergy active, so that's another buffer. 10 resilience, no distractions, 2 unflinching pulse mods, while in the rally barricade is 90% flinch resistance. 70 stability stat hand cannon, 5 resilience, 1 unflinching hand cannon mod, near 40% flinch resistance. When you're build crafting, you're gonna have to take this into account for the Crucible. And then pairing perks, even like Zen Moment. Zen Moment's kind of weird, but it would work. Things like heating up, getting the stability stat up. I would assume that adding on a stability stat, even tap the trigger or whatever it is, goes into that stability stat, making it have flinch reduction. That's massive. Now on to Airborne gameplay. Before getting into the build crafting part, they made fundamental changes to the modifiers applied while airborne. Your primary weapons will have less randomness and projectile accuracy in most cases. You'll have less aim assist instead. You will need precise aiming to land your shots without building heavily into airborne. So they took away aim assist while you're in the air. And when they say that there's less randomness, meaning when you jump in the air, your cone is small and tight with no error. Any bullet deflection that goes on will miss. You have to be on the target. We've added a new weapon stat, Airborne Effectiveness. It's a preset on all weapons except those where being airborne doesn't have an effect like a sword. With little to no investment, 0 to 30 airborne stat, a character will have a smaller accuracy penalty than retail, but will have significantly lower aim assist. With a minimal investment, 31 to 50, you'll have an all-around same in-air accuracy as an Icarus-equipped weapons do currently, but noticeably lower aim assist. 51 to 70, better accuracy than retail weapons with Icarus, with fewer misses due to randomness, but reduced aim assist. 71 to 99, you'll have no airborne accuracy penalty, very slightly less aim assist. And 100, the character will have no airborne accuracy penalty and the same aim assist. So what they're saying is, as we go through this, and with whatever changes that's coming to armor, you can build into flinch, you can build into airborne play. And when you build into airborne play, it looks like you're gonna have to make sacrifices. That stat has been tuned on all exotic weapons, everything that is shipped in season 16 or 17, and everything that's ever shipped with trials or nightfall loot. Older legendary weapons have a default value set per weapon archetype to a value just below the middle of the allowed stat range. This will be a hidden stat at season 17 launch, similar to aim assist and recoil direction. You'll be able to check the stat specifics through the API, and in Season 18, several previously hidden stats are going to be visible on weapon inspection screens. Okay, they go on. This stat influences several aspects of airborne gameplay. Let's talk about some highlights. Accuracy cone penalty for special weapons, slightly lower penalty than currently at 0 stat, 0 penalty at 100. Probably the biggest one, the accuracy cone penalty for primary weapons, a lower penalty than currently at 0 stat, 0 penalty at 60 to 100. Headshot aim resistance, 0 to 0, 1 degree at 100 stat on primary weapons, slug shotguns, linear fusions, machine guns, 0.5 on snipers. This controls how forgiving headshots are while airborne. If this is 0, you must be pinpoint, aiming precisely at the head to get the headshot. Otherwise, you get a body shot, even if your aim assist cone overlaps the head. So that means the reticle needs to be right on them. Previously, while airborne, players would get full aim assistance on headshots provided their aim assist cone overlap the head at all. Pellet shotgun spread angle, plus 25 at 0, 0 at 100 stat, meaning more shotguns spread at low airborne effectiveness. So it sounds like the Crucible. A lot of you out there are airborne with your shotty, even with your sniper, definitely with a hand cannon. You're pretty much going to have to build in as high as you can. If you want your current playstyle to keep going and be better, it has to pretty much be 100. That's what I'm reading from this. You're going to be able to min-max 50-60 airborne stat, but for a lot of you, you'll probably want to go 100. And the reasoning they tell you right here. Overall, you'll get fewer misses due to randomness from the accuracy cone while airborne, but reliance on aiming is much higher when you have a low stat. To make this easier on you, you need to build into airborne. With decent aim, you will land more body shots instead of crits, unless that's up to 90, 100. And then they go through the pre and post of like a hand cannon and a sniper. So it's telling you the deviation after the 60 stat, 0 degrees. That's wild. The airborne effectiveness stat comes from 3 sources: the weapon, the subclass, and the armor. The weapon has a base airborne effectiveness stat from 0 to 10, 0 to 30 depending on the weapon archetype. Exotic weapons, they've typically been bumped up higher than their legendary counterparts, meaning that they're going to be a little bit better. The Icarus grip or Adept Icarus grants plus 15. Certain perks such as a redesigned air assault, that should be fun, give it more. And then the valid range stats for the legendary weapons. And they give you 0 to 25, 30. So what's the highest ones? It's a submachine gun. What about shotties? 0 to 5. So yeah, they're making it give you very little airborne stat running those weapons. Even a breach grenade launcher, that's nuts. Okay, higher tiers of the legendary weapons like Trials, Raid, Nightfall use the upper end of those ranges. So yeah, we'll take a hand cannon, 0 to 25. Let's say Crisis Inverted is a 10, giving the airborne stat to your total 100. A palindrome would be 20 to 25 because it's a Nightfall weapon. Sweet Business 27, Huckleberry 33. So yeah, we knew that. Oh, with sidearms too. Sidearms are already really effective from the air. It has 35 stat. SMG 35 or 33. And it caps at 0 to 30 on the legendary, so that's the example. Ace of Spades 14, as an example of an exotic that is already really strong and doesn't need to excel. Ace is more along the line of a legendary because it's so good. Some examples of hand-tuned, Frontier's Cry, we would expect that's high because it's precision frame. Katana 12. So Katana and Ace of Spades are like right there because they're both strong. Ragnil D, it's a shotgun. It's 0 to 5. It's 3 right in the middle. Heat Rises, plus 70 while Heat Rises is active. Tempered Metal, plus 20. Whisper of Hedrons, plus 20. Okay, so this is just a big change because it's doing everything. They made very specific changes to the armor, like Necrotic Grips, plus 30 to Weapons of Sorrow. So your Thorns. Osteo. Boots, plus 30 to Lumina, so it's telling you that you should pair these things together. Foe Tracer, plus 20 to all. Trick Sleeves, plus 50 to sidearms. Oathkeepers, plus 40 to bows. They're pairing things. That's just awesome. This means if you want a good airborne effectiveness stat, let's say 70, you should pick a weapon with a high stat, put Icarus on it, and equip exotic armor piece that's going to help that weapon. Or run a subclass aspect, fragment, or ability. And if you want the best possible airborne effectiveness, you generally have to go all in on the weapon, exotic armor, and sub. Example, Terabot, Peacekeepers, Whisper of Hedrons, 83 airborne effectiveness. Skyburner's Oath with Heat Rises because you're a madman. It's 100, it gets capped. This is a big change for the weapon system. They're gonna see how it all goes and adjust post-shipment. For some fun, here's some graphs showing the most used exotic armor pieces for each class. I wonder what number 1 is. I haven't even looked at it. We'll be watching data. Look at this. Really see? Look at Stompies. For Hunter. More than 50% of hunters in the entire game, probably a million accounts, have these bad boys on. Look at that. It's expected. So what they've done here, when you do use Stompies, you do use Ophidians, and we can go back up here to Ophidians, plus 10 to all, so it's giving a little bit of bump to your airborne effectiveness. Is Stompies in here? Negative 50 to all. Whoa! Negative 50 to run Stompies. So there's your nerf. That's what they did to Stompies. You can have a good jump, but it's not going to be that good from the air. It loses aim assist. But if you have great aim, it's not going to affect you. So there's trade-offs. So that's a nerf to Stompies. Are there any other negatives? No. They just stuck that thing right in the middle, dude. Look at that. Playlist weapons. The latest playlist weapons drop from our activities. Older weapons are available from vendor rank-up packages or can be focused. These weapons are intended to provide energy drops even for players who spend a lot of time in an activity. Like Fortissimo. Adagio, Crisis Inverted, it has a ton. So Auto Rifle has a ton. I've been using it 4 times to Charm Vorpal. It's been great. Playlist weapons now have a chance to roll with extra traits in one or both columns, increasing with number of rank resets with that vendor during a given season. So if you play a lot of strikes, you play a lot of Crucible, we'll take Crisis Inverted right there with your rank up packages. Or when you get a drop, it could drop with an extra perk. All playlist weapons from Beyond Light and later will drop with the appropriate origin trait. Special ammo changes, 1-hit kills. We've talked about this. Aggressive Sniper with high impact reserves, Ariana's Vow, Monarch. You have your external 20% buff. That could be Sun Warrior, Empowering Rift, Charged with Light. Most of these use the same buff under the hood, so we've adjusted them all at once. With these changes, it's going to be much more rare to get easy one-hit kills on a weapon. Reduced the damage bonus of Empowering Rift, High Energy Fire, and Inertia Override from 20 to 15 against players. No effect in PvE. Big one right there. They've reduced 2 taps and 1 bangs. That hurts Ace of Spades. That hurts a lot of them. Maybe Linear Fusions could still one-shot body. Actually, I don't think so. In addition, we want special ammo to be less plentiful, making it more difficult to chain special weapon kills. They've disabled ammo scavenger mods in the Crucibles. That means you get 1 per brick. No matter how much ammo a player is carrying, if you pick up a brick, you only get 1 ammo for shotguns and snipers, or 1 kill's worth of ammo for weapons that require more than 1 shot, like Forerunner, Trace Rifles. They've returned several special weapon archetypes and exotic weapons, see below, with the general goal of reducing the effectiveness of uptime. Archetypes. In particular with shotties and fusions, they're responsible for more one-hit kills than we would like. We still want them to be an option, but less ubiquitous, less effective at multiple ranges, and with lower uptime. So special weapons. Now let's look at this chart real quick. Okay, the fusion rifle, we know. Shotgun, we know. Linear fusion, so that must be your Arbalist. That must be your Lawrence Driver. Got some GLs in there. And we have the Glaive. Good charts. All special weapons have had their in-air accuracy significantly reduced. While we're okay with encouraging players to build into their primary weapons more effective in the air, we do not believe a prevalence of airborne one-hit kill options is good for the Crucible. Special weapons have a slightly larger airborne accuracy penalty than primary weapons, reduced to 0 at 100. Special weapons have a similar airborne aim assist cone penalty to other weapons, around 50% at 0, and this penalty can be reduced but not entirely removed by investing in airborne effectiveness. So those things, I'm telling you right now, guys, airborne effectiveness, it's blanketed to your weapons. Things like Stompies immediately is in the negative. A special weapon is in the negative. Like, you want this stat to be high if you play airborne, period. It doesn't matter. That is your number one priority to pretty much get it to 100. Sniper rifles are fairly slow to ready, slow, and ADS, which has made snapshot feel mandatory. They've reduced the stow, ready, and aim down sight speed by 10%. All snipers are now snappier, and there's a matching change to snapshot below. Sniper rifles have less access to ammo than shotguns and fusions. Those bricks drop far away, so we think ammo scarcity will prevent sniper rifles from spiking. Slug and pellet shotties, overwhelmingly popular in the Crucible despite some changes, so we've touched them again with the goal of encouraging some diversity with the special weapon choice. We're keeping an eye on this change since we've touched shotguns multiple times, and we're going to adjust it again if needed. With this change, we expect shotguns to have a shorter one-hit kill distance, but still be effective enough in that short-range kill roll. This change reduces shotgun one-hit kill distance by 0.5 meters, so it should be 5.5 now, because the importance of spread angle is just as high as damage fall-off, and this has not been touched. Reduce damage fall-off start and endpoint by 1 meter. Reduce aim assist and magnetism fall-off at the end at 2 meters, so the shotgun range is really nerfed. It's like 5 meters now. Fusion rifle usage is trending pretty high, especially in trials, and bringing shotguns down a little bit more. So we've made a global change. With these changes, 20+ meter fusion one-hit kills should be very uncommon. And they've done this with a combination of damage fall-off and recoil changes. Okay, reduce damage fall-off near distance. 2 meters at 0 range, 1.3 meters at 100 range. And they also have some add-ins by, -2 meters or so when aimed on sights with a 15 zoom stat. So that's basically your run-of-the-mill fusion there. They've reduced damage fall-off distance. 1 meter at 0 range, 1.3 at 100. Reduce recoil scalar variances between 0 and 100 stability. 0 is unchanged. 100 stability increased from 0.5 to 0.550. They've increased the recoil penalty slightly. Look at Deliverance up there. Cartesian coordinate up there. Zealot way down there. Main ingredient, we know it's mid right there. It's a go-to for a lot. I would expect 50% of that usage to be it. And it's so crazy, you see like the Nox Cordis right there. This is a cool chart, man. They've reduced unmodified high impact charge time from 1 second to 0.96. So 960 charge time. They increased the damage per burst by 10. Precision, they've increased the charge time from 740 milliseconds to 780. Rapid fire, they increased the charge time from 460 to 500. Decreased damage per burst by 20. Besides Divinity, trace rifles aren't as popular in hard content as we want them to be. We particularly want damage type reworks of the oldest 3 trace rifles to have a chance to shine this season. They're also more affected by disabling scavenger mods. So with this change, they're a better use of special ammo against non-red bar targets. So they increased trace rifle damage against non-red bars by 20%, increased ammo picked up per brick from 18 to 30. So they got a buff. Primary weapons. ARs and pulses aren't as competitive as we like them to be at mid-range, and lightweight pulse rifles are too hard to use with their optimal time to kill. Yeah, you need like 100% headshot ratio. With these changes, we expect autos and pulses to have a better chance to compete against hand cannons in mid to long range and outrange standard zoom SMG. So auto rifle, increased damage fall off distance by 0.75 meters. Okay, that's pretty small. Pulse rifles, they increase damage fall off near distance based on the range stat. So 0 range, 15 to 16 meters, 100 range increased from 22.5 to 24. Note that this is hip fire. It's going to be multiplied by the zoom modifier. Damage fall off distance remains 40 meters regardless of the range stat. So 450 RPMs, damage per bullet, 15 to 16 with a 1.65 scalar. Precision damage is now 26.4. This isn't going to change their optimal TTK, but gives them ease of use. Thank you, Chris Proctor. So it's an 8 bullet kill. Low resilience, 190 hit points. It's going to be 6 head, 2 body. Otherwise, it's going to be 7 head, 1 body. They're pretty accurate. It should be good. We're going to see how it goes. A burst is 79.2 damage. So 2 bursts is 158.4. And then a couple body shots, 190. 7 head, 1 body is 200 damage. Zoom is too important on SMGs. SMGs with low zoom don't feel competitive. We've reduced the variance in zoom, brought the base zoom from 13 to 14, and extended the damage fall-off distance. With this change, several standard zoom SMGs will be more competitive, but this does make the inaccessible SMG with the highest perk trait RNG, the multi-mock, compete less with auto rifles and will no longer straight up outclass every other SMG gun in the Crucible. They gave them more range, they adjusted zoom values. Shire's went from 17 to 16, multi-mock 17 to 15, Stochastic 13 to 14, Ikelos 13 to 14. Huckleberry 13 to 15, so Huckleberry actually got really good. We like adaptive SMGs and we're starting to make them again. But in their current form, they kill a little too fast with body shots, so they've reduced the body damage to increase their body shot time to kill by 1 bullet without impacting their optimal TTK. That's a fine-tuned change. 12 to 11.25, multiplier 1.35 to 1.44. Precision hand cannons have always been good while airborne, effectively having built-in Icarus. And with the changes to airborne functionality, we want to preserve that feel while translating their advantage to the new system. The intrinsic trait switched from a 75% airborne accuracy penalty reduction to plus 25 airborne effectiveness, which means if you had a Frontier Cry with Icarus grip, it would be 59 before factoring in the armor and subclass. I would love to have seen a 180 buff, but I guess this is a buff, but a different way. Machine guns aren't still where we want them to be. They've increased the damage 40% against PvE combatants, 20% versus bosses, so a firing line machine gun might be good. We'll see. Xenophage and Grand Overture received this buff, except for the bonus versus bosses. Rocket launchers, changes, precision, negative 10% damage, both impact and detonation. High impact, no change. Adaptive and aggressive, plus 10%. An adaptive and aggressive, compared to precision, is a 20% damage swing. Because they're getting plus 10, precision's getting negative 10. Fighting Lion got more reload speed when Thin the Herd is active. And now we're increasing its blast radius and damage. With this change, it should be easier to get the damage you need to trigger the perk. They've reverted the Season 15 Breach Grenade Launcher blast radius reduction. But just for Fighting Lion, they've increased the blast radius by 0.4 meters, increased damage by 5%. Eyes of Tomorrow, it's getting a buff in PvE. They've increased damage versus bosses and champions by 30%. That's a true DPS option. Leviathan's Breath, the Archer's Tempo perk from the Catalyst, has an increased effect only on this weapon. And this is nice, we get to see what the draw time scaler is for Archer's Tempo. It's 0.75 times, it's now 0.56. Added a small delay before detonations on champions, mini-bosses, and bosses. This allows the impact to stun, and then the detonation to actually deal bonus damage against the stun champion. Damage changes need to be an even split. Okay, so overall damage versus champions is roughly doubled. The Huckleberry had an underwhelming engagement range. They updated the zoom, again, from 13 to 15. Our experiment with pushing Xenophage into harder hitting but slow firing didn't pan out, so we're increasing the fire rate. Does not benefit from the machine gun damage buff versus bosses. Monarch, it's too oppressive when combined with external damage buffs, but we felt that it could be stronger in PvE. With this change combined with the damage buff change above, we've introduced a 60 resilience gate on killing a Guardian PvP with a crit while standing in an Empowering Rift or similar. They've reduced the poison take damage to players by 25%, changed the damage type from burn to poison. This is largely housekeeping, not gameplay significant. They've increased the poison take damage versus AI by 50%. So first of all, Monarch is nuts right now with Void 3.0, with volatile rounds and the unrelenting Catalyst. So that's a great PvE buff. They put a resilience check on being one-tapped by it. That's good. Lorentz Driver can be difficult to fight against in PvP, in part because it does do very high body shot damage. I've said this in like every single video I've done on these things. Reduce body shot damage against players by 20%. This will also prevent it from being a one-hit kill with a body shot while in an Imp Rift combined with that change. Body damage reverts to old behavior when in the weapon's damage mode. Precision damage is unchanged. Skyburner's Oath felt like it didn't have a niche except for airborne memes. They've increased the ADS projectile speed by basically hit scan. Both ADS and Hipfire are now 150 RPM. Hipfire projectile no longer tracks, but arcs similar to a grenade launcher and has a larger detonation size than aiming down sights. The Hipfire detonation also applies a burn to targets. The bonus range from the Masterwork has been rolled into the base stat of the weapon. The Masterwork now grants bonus reload speed instead. Has the highest airborne effectiveness stat in the game of 35. Let's go Skyburner. The last word plays very differently on M&K than it does controller, but the disparity doesn't need to be that large. We're keeping an eye on this one. They reduced mouse and keyboard recoil penalty from 33% to 22%. So it got a little bit of buff on M&K, it looks. Arvalus is more dominant than we intended in PvE content. It's able to fill the anti-barrier role as well as shield break, They reduce damage versus champions by 25%, but it's still going to break them in one hit. Graviton Lance's Catalyst didn't help the weapon too much, so we want to give it a boost. This change gives it some interesting utility in PvE and the Crucible, particularly with the buff to exotic primary weapons of the Witch Queen. The Catalyst change from granting Hand in Hand to granting Vorpal Weapon and Turnabout. That means you can kill some ads, the Seekers are going to spawn, it could break shields, give you an overshield, and those explosions could have Vorpal and Volatile rounds. That should be nuts. Cold Heart. Sustained damage creates an Ionic Trace, and collecting an Ionic Trace grants energy to all abilities. Increased grace time before the damage ramp clears from 0.113 to 1 second. Prometheum Lens. Sustained damage applies a more useful burn. Wave Splitter. Power level no longer cycles randomly. The default damage output is the same as the old middle tier. Picking up an Orb of Power now grants 10 seconds of maximum power and caps at 20 seconds, up from 5 to 10. Now suppresses targets while granted this mode by picking up an orb. That's pretty sick. Osteostriga projectile somehow shipped rotated by 90 degrees. Looks a bit weird. They corrected the rotation on the projectile model. Lord of Wolves is a kind of shotgun that needs its own tuning. Reduced damage fall off start and end by 25%. Not expected, but we saw that coming. Perk Snapshot has felt mandatory on snipers forever. With this change, sniper rifles with Snapshot are going to feel about the same, but one without Snapshot will be a lot snappier. So they increased the ADS animation scaler from 0.5 to 0.75. Primary ammo weapons are unchanged. Opening Shot, they removed damage fall off scaler. Increased range stat bonus from plus 20 to plus 25. Other stats from this perk are unchanged. Plus 20 aim assist, 5% reduced accuracy cone angle, 10% accuracy cone growth. Full Choke, they've increased the spread angle from 0.95 to 0.96. It narrows the spread a little less. Smoothbore has always felt awkward, so they made it tighter from 1.1 to 1.75. So Smoothbore gives the most range. It's not too far off from what Full Choke's now giving. They're getting into Desperado. They increased fire recovery scaler from 0.4 to 0.7. It doesn't fire as fast with the perk active. They reduced the duration from 7 to 6 seconds. They removed the PvE damage penalty. Good. That means a Desperado Messenger is going to wreck in PvE. Air Assault. It was shelved, but adding Airborne effectiveness gives us the opportunity to tune it. It now grants plus 60 Airborne effectiveness stat when wounded, the same trigger conditions as Eye of the Storm. It should have been Blanket, right? It should have been Blanket from the air, you just get plus 60. Add on Icarus Grip or Adept Icarus with your exotic armor. I don't know. I don't like the when wounded. Mulligan, they increased the chance to return ammo on a miss from 20% to 35% on primaries, unchanged on special and heavy. Compulsive Reloader shipped a little weak. They increased the reload stat buff from plus 40 to plus 50. They also added an animation scaler, so it's going to be even faster. Adagio was allowing a one-hit body kill for slug shotguns. While this is possible with other perks such as Swashbuckler, the investment for the trigger was a little too low. They reduced the damage bonus for shotguns from 30% to 20%, so Fortissimo is not going to do that anymore. Icarus Grip now grants Airborne effectiveness stat instead of its previous Airborne accuracy penalty scaler. Gives plus 15 Airborne effectiveness. Just before last season ended, we announced a list of weapons that would be rotating out of D2 activities with no time to spare. Some of these weapons were seen as powerhouses, multi-mock, in previous Sandbox metas, and while others were just happy to be included. Next season and the season after is going to be no different. In an effort to keep loot pools from overcrowding as we continue to develop and release sweet new pieces of gear, we have a handful of weapons from Iron Banner, Nightfall's Trials that are going to be rotating and shipping out in Season 17. And we also have a list of weapons that are going to be rotating in Season 18. Leaving the loot pool in Season 17, Occluded Finality, Finite Impactor. That kind of sucks because Finite got Suros Synergy, and so did this, right? By the way, look for Occluded Finalities with Snapshot because it does have that Suros trait. Nightfalls, the Palindrome. The Comedian can go, but the Pally, man. Shire's Wrath, Messenger. Man, dude, that's rough. These weapons are like Messenger, Wrath, Palindrome, Occluded. I use all of those weekly. Leaving loot pools at the beginning of Season 18. Peace Bond. Okay, the machine gun can go. Plug 1, Hothead, Eye of Soul, Summoner. Note, Season 18 is a ways out. Weapons included in our planned rotation are subject to change. With the weapon talk out of the way, let's shift back to some near-term conversations and happening in D2. Exotic armor tuning. So next Tuesday, April 26th, the hot fix will become available with these changes. Axion Bolt base cooldown increased from 91 to 152. We saw that coming. And honestly, the Vortex, arguably stronger. Titan Barricade's base cooldown with the Bashed Void aspect is now 82 seconds, up from 53. This matches the recharge rate of the Warlock Rift. I'm cool with that. Offensive Bulwark now provides 60% less bonus grenade energy regeneration in the Crucible. Whisper of Change now provides 50% bonus damage resistance against players when near a stasis crystal, down from 25%. unchanged in PvE. Renewal grasps. While equipped, the grasps increase the base cooldown from 62 to 152. Perfect. The outgoing damage penalty applied to player victims within the dust field is reduced from 50% to 20%. Damage unchanged in PvE. Stay tuned for the full patch notes article planned for release alongside the hotfix. So this is a massive this week at Bungie for our sandbox, because what they've done with flinch reduction, what they've done with the airborne effectiveness does change how we play. And for a lot of players, honestly, it could be one or the other. It could be kind of both, right? Like you could set yourself up for flinch reduction with your resilience stat and the weapon and mods, then have on airborne stuff to take less flinch, be better from the air. But if you don't build into them, it's going to be bad. It's going to be worse for you. I love the global changes. High energy fire, imp rift. It's down so things don't one-tap you. That's everything. Ace won't two-tap, DMT won't two-tap, snipers won't body shot, Lorenz won't body shot. There's probably some things that you could put together, but really it looks like from the air, SMGs and sidearms are going to be really, really good without even building heavily into the airborne stat. Mostly for your primary weapons, those pulses, scouts, mostly hand cannons, you're going to need that stat to be high. They nerfed stompies. They buffed a lot of things. It is a wild this week at Bungie. I want to know your thoughts. Let's talk about it down below. And I might make some separate videos of some of the things talked about in here. Let me know what you would like to hear more about. Thank you for watching, and until the next one, I am CoolGuy.